Hello everyone. So in the last video we had talked about the basics of pedigree analysis, and we have seen some symbols related to pedigree analysis which are basically or most commonly used in order to read pedigree. And then we also taken some idea about the rules to how to solve a questions based on pedigree. And we have seen there are basically four types of disorders: autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, X-linked dominant, and X-linked recessive. So in last video we have seen what all genotypes, like all these disorders, they can be expressed in what particular kind of genotype, and what are the basic sign, the direct signs of all these disorders. And also we have seen, or we have learned some basic step that how to proceed with solving pedigree based question, right? So in the last video we have learned all these things. So in this video today we are going to solve, and we are going the pedigree based question, and we are going to apply all those knowledge here now, right now, in all these questions for your better understanding, right? So let us start with the very first example in front of you. Is it is asking to identify the type of inheritance that is shown in this pedigree. So there is here is a pedigree in front of you, and you need to identify the type of inheritance that is shown in diagram. So as if you remember, the steps were that first you need to look for whether the pedigree is dominant and recessive, and then we will see that whether it is autosomal and X-linked. Also we will use all these tricks that we had learned about in our previous video, right? So the very first one is asking to identify the inheritance pattern here in this pedigree. So first we, according to our steps, first we need to look for whether the pedigree is dominant or recessive. So first of all, just mark the generations. This is the first generation, this is the second, this is the third one, and this one is the fourth one. Okay, so first we need to like whether it is dominant or recessive, and for that we need to see whether the generation, any of the generation, is being skipped. So we have affected individual in this first generation, in second generation also, in third generation also, and in fourth generation also. So there is no skipping of generation. That's why I can say the disease has to be dominant, or the trait has to be dominant. Okay, since there is no skipping of generation, every generation is having affected individual. Now in order to understand whether it is autosomal and whether it is recessive, you can have different tricks also. The one is, the very common one is, you need to count the male and female and just look that whether they are coming as 50-50%, okay, or not. So male 1 2 3 and females 1 2 3 4, okay, 4 and 5. So basically around to 50-50% you can say. But a very clear sign, if you will just, I told you to look for the very each and every sign of pedigree, and you will notice some very unique thing in this whole pedigree. And here I can see that this particular individual, yes, this particular individual, it is passing, this is the male individual, and this male individual, that is the father, is passing this disease to his daughter, right? So all the daughters of an affected father is affected here, and this is the clear sign for your X-linked dominant disease. We have studied that all the daughters of an affected father will be affected in X-linked dominant case. So this pedigree indeed will be your X-linked. Also, if you remember that we talked about that in case of X-linked, the inheritance pattern is somewhat crisscross type. So father will be passing this this male individual, that is father, will be passing his this trait to daughter, then daughter will be passing to the, yes, to the son as well, right? So here, since the affected father is having all the affected daughter, that is why this kind of pedigree is, can be said it is dominant X-linked one. So option A is correct. Now let us proceed with the second one. Again, to proceed with any kind of pedigree, first of all you need to look for the whether the pedigree, for the sign that whether the pedigree is dominant or it is recessive. So for that you need to just look for the generation, whether any generation is being it being skipped or not, right? So here in first generation there are affected individual, in second as well, in third as well the individual is affected, so there is no skipping of generation, so it has to be dominant one. It has to be dominant one. Okay, then second sign that you need to look, that whether the inheritance pattern, it is showing the autosomal one or the X-linked one. While in the case of X-linked one, or in the case of, I should say, autosomal one, we have this rule that 50-50% individuals are affected. So in this generation you can say one male and one female is affected, so it is 50-50% case. And the 50-50% case we have talked about, it happens in your autosomal type of inheritance pattern, right? So it has to be autosomal. So this will be your correct answer. It is showing autosomal dominant inheritance pattern. Now the third question, third example. So a pedigree is shown below for a disease that is autosomal dominant and the genetic makeup of the first generation is. Okay, so pedigree is already, they have told us that it is of autosomal dominant, and in the case of autosomal dominant, if you remember, the genotype is actually autosomal dominant. It either can be in homozygous dominant condition or heterozygous condition. Okay, so affected individual will be having all those genotype in the homozygous, either in the homozygous dominant or in the heterozygous condition. So, and they're asking about the genetic makeup of this first generation. This is the first generation and they're asking about the genotype of these individual then. So if the individual, I can say, is, if this pedigree analysis or the pedigree that is given here, it is showing autosomal dominant disease, then this individual will be either AA and or either capital A and small a, that is homozygous dominant or heterozygous condition. But since this individual is unaffected, it has to have recessive condition. It has to have homozygous recessive condition, right? Because it is unaffected. Okay, and this type of condition is it is given only in the second option, only in the second option, that is your homozygous recessive. All other options have other than this, right? So indeed your second option is the correct option. Second option is the correct option. Okay, now third example. Which one of the following conclusion drawn is correct about given pedigree? Okay, so there is a given, there is a pedigree given in front of you and we have to draw the appropriate conclusion. We have to select the most appropriate one or the correct one. Okay, so the very first one is saying that the parents are homozygous recessive. Okay, so this is the first generation, this is the second generation. So these are the parents and these are the children. Okay, and the first one is saying, first statement, that the parents are homozygous recessive. So let us just mark these parents as homozygous recessive. If both the parents are homozygous recessive, then every child will be having only this allele only this allele only. Because there is no dominant allele present, so there is no chance these children are going to get dominant allele. Okay, so all the children are going to have these type of allele only. But in this case, having homozygous recessive condition is not showing any disease. But here, this can be the only genotype of this individual, but it is disease. So this genotype is not matching here, and so this statement is incorrect. The parents cannot be homozygous recessive. Okay, the parents, they cannot be homozygous recessive. So let us go ahead with the second statement. Second statement saying the trait is Y-linked. Well, if they are saying that the trait is Y-linked, then the in the case of Y-linked, always the disease get passed on from the affected male to the affected son. But here the son is diseased one, but the son is diseased, but the father is unaffected. So it cannot be Y-linked. Okay, and the third statement is saying the parents are homozygous dominant. So the parents are homozygous dominant. Both the capital type of allele are present. So in the case if both the parents are homozygous dominant, then all the individual are also going to be homozygous dominant, because this is the only possibility. There is no chance that heterozygous condition could be formed or homozygous recessive condition could be formed, because there is no recessive allele present, right? And again, homozygous dominant condition here is having unaffected individual, but here the individual is affected in this having the same genotype like their parent, but here the disease one, here these are not the disease one. So again, this is also the wrong statement. This statement is also the wrong one. Okay, so let us talk about the fourth statement now. So fourth statement is saying that the parents are heterozygous. Let us see whether it is also correct or incorrect or the correct one. The parents are heterozygous. So if the parents are heterozygous, the condition will be like this. Okay, and in these children, since the heterozygous condition is showing the unaffected thing, so whether these unaffected one can be either this or it can be this genotype as well. Because they can inherit whether inherit this A allele from father and this capital A allele from mother, or they can inherit both the dominant allele from both the parents, right? So this can be the conditions, but these individual can have these alleles, that is homozygous recessive alleles, and they will be disease, because in dominant condition the disease are not shown. So in other individual can have any of the genotype, but these individual will be homozygous recessive type, because these are disease one, and that these individuals, since they're having dominant type of allele, they are not showing any disease. So disease is not dominant one, it has to have recessive one, right? So yes, these conditions, the parents being heterozygous in nature is actually getting fulfilled here, and they are giving the right idea about the disease individuals, disease children, or the unaffected children. So yes, the parents are heterozygous. So this one is your correct statement. Okay, now let us talk about the fourth one, the fourth example. What is the below pedigree conclude? Okay, so here is one pedigree given in front of you, and this pedigree is showing that let us just mark all the generation first, second, third, and the fourth. Okay, so in order to determine whether the pedigree is showing the dominant or the recessive condition, you should just look for the sign that whether there is a skipping of generation or not. So I can clearly see here that the second generation is not having any affected individual, right? So there is a skipping of generation, so it has to be your recessive condition. It has to be your recessive pedigree. Okay, second, we need to find out whether this pedigree is showing the autosomal type of inheritance or the X-linked type of inheritance. So as earlier I have told you that we need to look for very unique sign in order to conclude for a type of inheritance. So here I can see there are no affected parent here. These parents are unaffected, but they are having affected child. So unaffected parents having, yes, unaffected parents is having affected child. So this, if you remember, we have studied this condition me show you. Unaffected parents can have affected children in autosomal recessive. So it has to be your autosomal condition. It has to be your autosomal recessive condition. So your correct answer will be option 2, option autosomal recessive. Okay. Also, in the case of autosomal, we have said that 50% individuals in a particular generations are affected. So one male and one female, right? So autosomal recessive it is. Fifth one. So fifth one, in this it is saying that a given pedigree shows the trait is inherited as autosomal dominant. Okay, it is already given, and we need to trace the genotype of mother and father. So this is the first generation, this is the second generation, these were mother and father, and these are their children. And the pedigree has the question has already told us that pedigree is showing autosomal dominant. So affected individual genotype will have to be either homozygous dominant and or heterozygous. Okay, so this is will be the condition of affected individual, while in the case of unaffected individual they are going to have homozygous recessive condition. So this is for unaffected individual. Okay, so since this individual is unaffected, I can clearly say that it is homozygous recessive condition, right? So father has to be homozygous recessive, and it is given in only option C and option D. So either the correct option will be option C and option D. Now we need to find out the genotype of mother. So again, this is homozygous recessive condition. This individual, the male child, is also unaffected. So it is again homozygous recessive. Now, in order to have this type of genotype in this male child, one A must be coming from the father, but another A have to come from the mother, because during fertilization all the gametes they just fuse together, right? So and the gametes will be having the gametes they have only either of the chromosome, right? So this mother, the mother has to have one A or one small a in their genotype. Okay, so another one, since the pedigree is autosomal dominant, so condition can either be this one or this one of the affected individual. So it has to have one A here. So the genotype will have to be this heterozygous. So this is the genotype of mother, and your correct answer will be option D then. Now the sixth one and the last one. The daughter was married to a normal person and their daughter had the trait. Okay, this is the first generation, this is the second generation, and this is the third generation. So they're saying that daughter, these are the parents and the daughter, they have married to the daughter to the normal person, and the daughter had the trait. Okay, then it can be explained as, so we need to select, there are four options given, and in all the options there are genotypes given for this pedigree. We need to conclude, or we need to select the correct one. Okay, so let us start with the option A. Option A, in the option A it is saying that the unaffected mother is showing this heterozygous condition. It has heterozygous type of allele and heterozygous type of genotype, and here the affected male is actually having homozygous recessive type of allele. Okay, then in the children we can see that since the dominant condition is actually unaffected, so all the dominant or the heterozygous one are unaffected, and the homozygous recessive has come in this girl child, and she is, that is why she is affected. Okay, and again the children of these particular individual when produced, in the case of girl, again it is one A has come from here, one A has come from here, so it is so homozygous condition is there, so homozygous recessive condition is actually showing the affected one. And since in this girl the alleles are in heterozygous condition, so it is not showing the disease. So it can be the correct one, but we will have to look for other options as well. So let us move ahead with B. So in the case of B, the unaffected one is showing as heterozygous condition, and again the affected is showing the homozygous condition. And again, when they are children, we can see that the here, since homozygous recessive condition is showing the disease, then in this conditions, it is, if it is homozygous recessive, then this individual has to be affective. It has to be affected, but it is not effective. So this is indeed the wrong one. Also here, genotype is shown as capital A, capital A. One has to come from mother, but other has to come from father, but father doesn't have A allele. So again, this is the wrong genotype. It is not correct at all. Then the C1. C1 is in the C option we have homozygous recessive condition here, and here homozygous dominant condition, and it is showing the disease. Okay, and in the case second generation, we can see that this particular girl child is having homozygous recessive condition, but it is disease one, which is not possible because it is not disease one. It is showing the disease. So again a wrong one, right? And option D is showing again recessive condition, homozygous dominant condition, and again the girl child is having all the recessive condition, but it is again showing the disease. So again this one is also your wrong one, right? So your correct answer or correct option will be option A. So children, we have studied or understood the basic concepts of pedigree analysis today, and how to solve the question based on pedigree analysis. We have taken some basic idea. I hope you have understood, and it has given you some clear idea about how to proceed with this pedigree based question. So I'll see you in the next I'll see you next time with some other topic. Till then, bye bye, take care, stay safe, and we'll meet soon. Bye bye.